It's hard for me to talk about Santa Cruz because I've never lived anywhere else. It's just normal. I mean, I grew up here. My mom was obsessed with the beach. So that was like always her dream, is to live in Santa Cruz. So that's where she forced us to live. I don't know, I grew up here. It was like a skate surf town. I never got into either. I stayed in the house and played video games and drew. Monsters. I only drew monsters. I drew weird shit. There's like a big giant drawing of a kid with a bunch of like weird, like a demon inside of him that's scratching to get out. In third grade, my teacher recommended that I be evaluated, psychologically evaluated, because she thought I was mentally disturbed. My mom said that no, he's just an artist, he likes to draw. And she said that's not art, that's a cry for help. But I mean, I basically grew up a lot with my grandma. I didn't get along with my stepdad, so whenever there was a problem, I would just go stay with my grandma, or we would all stay with my grandma. But my grandma was always extremely supportive, to the point of being very annoying to my mom and my sister. To her, I was the golden boy that could do anything, and she made me really feel like I could do anything. It was like when she said, "You're gonna be a success," it wasn't like she was just saying it. It was like a fact. Like that was gonna happen, like that was that. Aether was kind of based around my niece. She kind of reminded me of me because she didn't really seem to like to play with other kids, and she liked to just do things by herself and explore by herself, and she was very imaginative, and she really liked monsters. So that whole thing like brought me back to when I was little, and I thought, how cool would it be to like make a game that could put other people inside my mind when I was like 5, 6, 7, and that was Aether. So this kid gets on the back of a monster, and the monster goes around in space, and he gets to explore all these other planets because he can't connect to anybody on Earth, so he goes to find other friends. But all these other planets are inhabited with these kind of weird or sad or nervous creatures. And he goes and tries to solve their problems. And he solves the problems, but they don't become happy. And he keeps going around all these different planets, but each time he solves one of these problems, the Earth gets smaller. And then when he comes back to Earth, and it's so small that when he touches it, it breaks, and then he's kind of lost in space. And it was kind of just like the ideas of, you know, it's really cool to be a creative kid, and it's cool to do all that stuff, but there's of course dangers of isolating and becoming obsessed with things and having phobias. And that was the whole thing, is like each of those planets was like a phobia of mine when I was little. And when I was little, before I'd go to bed, I would obsess about these things because I thought I'd be able to fix them, but in the end I would just make them worse. They wouldn't be fixed, but I would be so obsessed with them. The next day I'd go to school, I'd have stomach aches and I need to go home. A lot of the imagery and stuff that I pulled from, I'm still very, very, very happy with. To me, it speaks perfectly of how I felt when I was little. Like when I play that game, that's exactly how I remember it feeling, and still very happy with it. And then shortly after that, my grandma passed away, and she had a box of my drawings that she saved when I was little, and that's when I found this picture that I had drawn of me in space floating. And this is Edmund floating in space, and my friend too is space, or something like that. Space is my friend, and my friend too is me. I should break that out. But yeah, no, it was validating to find that box and see those things and be like, wow, like this is just like the game. Good evening.
Why in Aether your friend is an octopus?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is it supposed to mean something personal? Why in Aether your friend is
I think the only reason I made it an octopus is because when I was little I wanted to be
personal?
a marine biologist. So I used to catch octopuses. The only reason I made it an octopus is because when I was little I wanted to be a marine biologist.
What happened to that dream?
I used to catch octopuses.
and I always thought they looked cool. I gave up on it when I found out you had to wake
What
up really
happened to
early
that dream
to
of
go
being
out
a marine
on
biologist?
boats in order to find those things in the water. I gave up on it. Also,
When I
minus
found
that
out
you have to get you had to wake up really early to go out. Seems like a lot of work in order to find those things in the water.
Okay.
Also,
In
minus that
Aether,
you have to
have
get
you ever thought of giving wings to the monster?
Seems like a lot of work.
How come you came up with the idea of the tongue? In Aether, have you ever thought of giving wings to the monster?
I liked the idea of
How come you
swinging.
came up with the idea
Swinging
of the tongue
felt
being a transport
childlike.
medium between planets?
So I like the idea of like swinging. I like the idea of swinging, actually flying. Swinging felt more drifty and floaty, and it seemed to go with things. I like the idea of like swinging from clouds instead of. I wanted there to be more interaction. It just seemed of getting around, more drifty and floaty, and it seemed to go with things better than if you just took off and flew. I wanted there to be more interaction of getting around instead of just taking off and flying. You can probably kick your legs. We need something to push you along.
In Indie Game the movie, you look back at drawings from your childhood that look exactly like
probably
what
kick
you
your
did
legs.
in Aether. Did you ever realize the art style? In Indie Game the movie, you look back at drawings from your childhood that look exactly like
you
what
remember
you did
as
in
the
Aether.
game was made?
Did you ever
Or
realize
were
the
you
art style so
surprised?
I
Closely
think what
resembles
this
them?
person's saying is
Did part of you
theme.
remember?
Yeah.
As
not
the
the
game
art
was
style.
done?
I have not progressed
Were you
past the
surprised
5.
I think what
drew like a
person's
5-year-old?
saying is
Yeah, I was surprised.
theme.
My drawings
Yeah.
look
Not
like a
the art
5-year-old. I have not progressed
Were you
past the
surprised
5. The weird thing was
like a 5-year-old?
there was only one drawing
My
in
drawings
the
look
box
like a 5-year-old.
that was me in space. And
The weird thing was
there was only one drawing
more than
in the
anything
box
else.
because it seemed that was me in
Lonely
space
and weird.
and I wasn't like that. So I think it was maybe
Space kind of
subconscious,
scared
but
me
maybe
more
a
than anything else
coincidence
because
that I
it
had it in space.
But I
Lonely
remember
and
when you
weird.
found that drawing, you were surprised.
So I
It
think
seemed
it
like a
was
weird company.
maybe subconscious. It seemed like a bizarre coincidence. It seemed like something subconscious
But I remember
that I
when you
did
found
when I was
that drawing, you
going
were
into
surprised.
the
It seemed like a
lonely
weird
child
coincidence.
space. It seemed like a bizarre coincidence. It seemed like something subconscious that I did when I was,
Does
going into the
Molasses,
lonely child space. Yeah.
the ocean planet in Aether,
Space.
have a moon / secret planet?
It does have a moon,
Molasses?
but everybody sees it. The moon is the
The
island that's
ocean
attached to the
planet
planet. Like the
Have a
planet is
moon /
sucked onto the
secret
moon
planet?
and pulled the moon down. It does have a moon, but everybody sees it. So the moon is the
little
island that's
island
attached to the planet. On the planet, is actually its moon. Sucked onto the moon and pulled the moon down into the water.
Wow.
So the little island on the planet is actually its moon.
You said that you're happy with the way Aether turned out. Do you use games like Aether, games that you're happy with, to set a bar of quality when you create? You
Or do
said
you try to
that
stay away
you're
from
happy with the way
personal
Aether turned out. Do you use games like
bars
Aether, games
when
that
you
you're happy
create?
with, to set a bar
Usually
of
when I'm
quality
making
you
something, I
create?
try to make it
Or
different
do
than
you try to
everything
stay
else,
away
but I
from
do have
personal
like,
rules?
I guess, like a
Bars
bar
when
as
you
far as
create.
like. Usually when I'm making something, I try to make it different than everything else, but I do have like kind of raised the bar for me when it came to as far as like personal things, making something almost probably to a fault. Like there were certain aspect of it, Aether was that I wasn't kind of raised the bar for me when it came to doing personal things and interviews and stuff. Probably to a fault. And like there were certain aspects of it. So I think comfortable with Aether talking about. I kind of learned stuff how to abstract, really discuss things, and not do such a literal. I think. With Aether underline message or whatever, I kind of learned because time fuck for me is very similar in those things and not do such a literal
What were you not comfortable with?
underline message or whatever.
Like if you
Because
talk
time
about
fuck
it
for
too
me
much,
is
you're
very
telling
similar
people
in
what
how
it
I
is.
wrote it. That and
What were you not
it just seemed too
comfortable with?
personal. I don't know. It just seemed and too like time
Like
for
if
like
you
for me,
talk
time
about it
fuck
too
is
much,
just
you're
as
telling
personal.
people what it is.
But that and it just seemed too personal. And like time for me, time fuck is just as personal and distorted enough for people to think it's just weird. And I think I'm more comfortable with that. It's like same thing with Isaac too, like and distorted enough. There's a message there, but I don't need to talk about it, and I don't need to dig deep into it. And I think I'm more comfortable with that. Like same thing with Isaac too. Like I don't know. There's a message there, but I don't need to talk about it, and I don't need something to dig deep into it. Make me feel that comfortable. Because there's a lot of different things kind of there. I don't know, but Aether just seemed too straightforward. Might try it again. Something about that didn't make me feel that comfortable with.
Aether had
kind of
more
revisiting
of a
it, but
meditative, ponderous,
I don't know.
and
I
whimsical tone
might
than
try
other
it
games,
again,
which are more known
later.
for having a harder, underground comic edge to them.
Aether
Is this a
had
style
more
you
of
can
a
see yourself
meditative,
exploring
ponderous,
further
and
in one of your
whimsical
future
tone than
your
your
other games? Which are more known for
Possibly.
having a harder, underground comic edge to them. Is this a style you can
I just
see yourself
usually just
exploring
go with
further
whatever
in one of your
works.
future games?
If it if it looks possibly good and it feels right at that point in time. I just usually just go with whatever. If Acacia wasn't born, then I wouldn't have done it because if it totally looks good and it feels right, pulled that out at that point in time. So it was actually like an abnormal. If Acacia wasn't born, then I wouldn't have done it because it was totally kind of rose to the surface when she was born. So it was actually an abnormal. I don't know. I'm sure sometime down the line I'll do something else. Kind of rose to the surface when she was born. But that's not. I don't know. I'm sure sometime down the line I'll whimsical and do something else that's whimsical, but whimsically weird. That's not usually my. Binding is whimsically weird. Whimsical in a weird way.
A bit of whimsy.
I usually go with whimsically weird.
In Indie Game, the movie you talked about how your niece and grandmother
weird.
went a bit of whimsy.
Yeah.
Sort of sparked the idea for the atmosphere of the game. In Indie Game, the movie you talked about how your niece and grandmother, were there any other types of things that provided inspiration? Sort of sparked the idea for the atmosphere of the game. Just revisiting
my childhood, I guess. Just kind of like thinking about how I was and how I dealt with things. Just and revisiting remembering the kind of my stuff childhood, that I guess. Just kind of like when I was little, thinking about and how I was and how I dealt with things. Just kind of go back there as much as I can. It was just something about Acacia being born and watching her and learn and stuff, just kind of go back there as much as I can. It was just something about Acacia being born and watching her remembering, learn and stuff. Memories, like these memories I had, which were good memories, were all memories of being alone. And I started remembering, all these memories and all these memories I had, which were good memories, were all memories of being alone.
Saw a dead bug and explained to us how its body doesn't work anymore. The picture that you shown in the game, the movie,
it's weird to see her experience death in that way, and have an understanding of it. It's weird just like when we went to the graveyard and she asked what those little gravestones were, death in that way, probably for babies, and have an understanding of it. And just like when we went to the graveyard and she asked what those little gravestones were. It's a really almost impossible like headspace to go back into when you're little because everything seems. It's a really endless, almost impossible like headspace to go back into when you're little because everything's kind of just kind of going back to that headspace, endless, and trying to see magic through the eyes of a little kid when they're just learning. And it was kind of just going back to that headspace. And because when I was little, I really thought that I could communicate with aliens with my mind when I was in bed and stuff like that. When I was little, I really thought I believed they could hear everything I was saying. Communicate with aliens with my mind when I was in bed and stuff like that. I totally believed it. I believed they could hear everything I was saying.
Did you choose the distinctive art style for Aether? Did you choose it because you wanted something different? Or did you think it would fit the feel and subjects in the game? Did you choose the distinctive art
there was a bunch of different reasons. I remember I wanted it to look like a kid's storybook.
It would fit the feel and subjects in the game?
I also wanted to there was a bunch of different reasons. I remember I waned it to look like Aether doesn't have any storybook, like no outlines. So I wanted to do wanted to try more like painted style avoid lines. So Aether doesn't have any stuff like that, which was a challenge. So I wanted to do. I usually try to more like painted style and different art style. I was just trying to do something new that felt like that, which was really light and fluffy. And I usually try to challenge myself in some new way when I almost like it looked like. I was just trying to do something new that felt really light and fluffy and childlike. And almost like it looked like a dream or something.
Do you feel that Aether is underrated or anything of that sort?
I don't think it's underrated. I mean,
do you feel that
I remember thinking how odd it was. It was a realization of when. I don't think it's underrated because I made Aether time. No, I remember thinking Meat Boy how odd it was. It was a realization of when. Because I made Aether and Time Gray Matter like all around the same year. And I remember all of the games. Coil got way more hits. Gray Matter way more like all around the same year. And even though Aether got a lot of praise, I remember all of Aether got way more praise than any of those other games. More hits. But I think Aether had way more plays than Aether did. Like 150,000. Even though Aether got a lot of praise, and Meat Boy had Aether got way more praise than any of those other games. So it was. But I think Aether had like 150,000 plays. And play these games more, but respond more critically to. It was kind of like I think. People, I like the idea of that too. Because play to be these games more, but respond more critically to these games. Meat Boy and I think Aether are completely. I like the idea of that too because I thought that the two Aether was a much better game. But the majority of people didn't. Ether are completely different games. So I guess in that respect, it's underrated. But I think it gets the credit better game that it's due. I mean, a lot of people didn't, which was quite surprising. So I guess in that respect, it's underrated. But I think it gets the credit.
What do you think about the idea?
I mean, a lot of people wrote about it, which was quite surprising.
Also, what lessons have you learned about eliciting emotions? What do you think about the idea of art games after
that was weird because that was around the time when the whole art game thing started. Like, I don't use that term anymore for anything that I do because it was everything I do. That was weird because that was around the time when the whole art game thing started. Like, I don't use that was around the time where that was like a term anymore for anything. If you made an experimental game, everything expressed as an art game. They called it an art game. It's art, and there were about 10. But that was around the time where that was like a thing that year. If you made an experimental game that was expressive and emotional, they called it an art game. And there are about 10. Like when it comes to just that year and making emotional or expressive games, they kind of just died off. And I don't know. I just kind of go with what feels natural. When it comes to just the more honest you are, making emotional or expressive games, I think the more artistic it feels. I don't know. I just kind of go with what feels natural, and the more honest you are with what you're doing, I think the more artistic it feels.
I think that's basically it. Was asked in Google Translate, I think. When does a man say, "I want to pour my childhood in a game"? Or did the things came naturally? Asked in Google Translate. When does a man say, "I want to pour my childhood in a game"? Or did but I think that's exactly what it was. So Aether was only made in 2 weeks, so there wasn't much time to like plan and think. Like I had to improvise. But I think that's exactly what it was. So Aether was only made my gut and improvising. So there wasn't much time to like plan and think. The theme I had to improvise and just go with what comes out and just dive in with my gut and improvising. Pull out whatever's there. To just be like, all right, the theme is my childhood. Let's see what comes out and just dive in. And just pull out whatever's there. Confused as things happen a lot more like not putting any effort into it, but just because something happens organically doesn't mean there's a lot of that's confused as
I mean, I found for me like
not putting any effort into it.
You get the most beautiful and unique and honest things, most artistic things appear. Yeah, I mean, I found for me like you just let it happen. You get the most beautiful and unique and honest just let it come out. Most artistic things appear. Like for Aether, when you just improvise. I can't say I thought a lot about it. Don't think about it that much. I can say I put a lot there and I slept a lot. Like when I woke up, I can't say I thought a lot about it. I can say I put a lot there and I slept a lot. Pick the ones when I woke up, put them in the game. I had all these memories and feelings to the next that were just coming up to the surface. And I was just thinking. Pick the ones that worked, put them in the game, and move on to the next.
At the end of Aether,
it wasn't a lot of
continued.
Thinking. It was just a lot of feeling.
You try to convey or build upon the same childlike feelings of loneliness. At the end of Aether, it said, or would it be more mature feelings like going from childhood convey or build upon the same childlike feelings of loneliness
I've actually
or would it be more mature
wanted to do a sequel for a long time, but it was actually an option to do Aether. I've actually not a sequel, but like a bigger version. Wanted to do a sequel for a long time for the Wii instead of. It was actually an option to do for the obvious reasons I mentioned. Not a sequel, but like a financially, if I'm investing 2 years of my life for the Wii instead of Meat Boy, but I went with Meat Boy for the obvious reasons I mentioned. Possibly perform financially if I'm investing 30 times my life better. I want to invest in a game. So it was obvious that I was going to do that. But possibly perform if and when I revisit 30 times better. It'll still be just building on the same feeling. I've got like pages and pages of design documents. If and when ideas and I revisit Aether and different themes, it'll still be just building on the same feeling. I've got like it would be pages of design, a bit more abstract than Aether ideas, and not as literal, and it probably would talk more about my childhood growing up, but not progressing like into teenage. A bit more abstract than Aether was, not as literal, and it probably would talk more about my childhood growing up. I'll think more about it, but not progressing like into teenage years. Too much still into thinking about it. Usually will like make me a bit bored of the idea. I'll think more about it when the time comes, because putting too much effort into thinking about it usually will like make me a bit bored of the idea. Is that it?
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Space.
Does Malasif
little and just pull out whatever's there.
I think things happen a lot more organically than people think.